Welcome back, everybody. We are talking today about some of the modifications, mods, and hacks that I threw in of Tomb of Annihilation. I run a game every Monday with a bunch of students. They're all adults, so like at a university. And we just finished this game just last night. And I wanted to talk about some of the modifications, some of the hacks that I threw in here to make it more applicable, because for a lot of people this was their very first game, and I know that's kind of evil throwing them into Tomb of Annihilation, but I also think this is a great introductory game. It gives players an idea that they are mortal and you could die, but also great problem solvings in terms of the puzzles, great explorations in terms of trying to find different things, and great role play aspects as well. I think this book has one of the all the facets that I love about D&D found right in here. So, right off the gate, I'm going to say that this is a spoiler-filled talk about Tomb of Annihilation. So if you're a player or a DM and you don't want to find out what happens in Tomb of Annihilation, there's your blanketed spoiler warning. If you don't want to be spoiled about it, yeah, don't watch this. But if you want to find out what I did within this game, how to kind of tweak it to meet my own needs, especially for a first-time group and party, it was going to be a good time. First off, right off the gate, even though this game is set for players starting at first level, I actually ran them through the Adventures League game of A City on the Edge, which is the first Adventures League game that ties in to Tomb of Annihilation. This is one of my all-time favorite Adventure League's game. It's 5 sessions. I spread it out over about 8 to 9 sessions just to give them a little bit more oomph on there, especially for most people, this was their first game. So for anybody that's interested, the code is DDALO701. And it takes players from level 1 to level 5. And that's exactly what I wanted them to have. I wanted them to have a little bit of experience playing the game, figuring out different types of puzzles, how to check for traps, and also to know you could die in this game, because that was a concept that not everybody had kind of grabbed a hold of. So by level 5, they're a little bit meatier. They're able to go in and traverse the wilds of Chult without having to worry about dying right off the get-go. It also gave them a great introduction of Port of Narazaru and make a lot of different connections, because the ending of that session, I introduced the death curse. So a lot of those NPCs that they bonded with and created really meaningful relationships with, some of them were on a ticking clock and some of them died outright. Like at the end, I had one of their NPCs be sacrificed for this big ritual that includes this dreamer dagger that you have to stop and collect all their pieces with, create, and then destroy. And so within the final showdown, one of the NPCs dies. When they tried to bring them back, this is when they realized that that magic isn't working. And that was like patient 0, essentially, of this death curse that they then had to figure out, A, what's going on, B, how do we stop it, and C, now we got to go and take on one of the big liches. So here are just a few of the mods that I made. I mean, first off, I started them in the City on the Edge, and then I quickly threw them right into figuring out and doing a little bit of crime solving in that. From there, I actually got them to hire one of the guides. And first off, right off the gate, I love the fact that they give you so much choice in this book about the different guides that you can hire. But I actually cut that guide handout right in half. I only gave them opportunity to take 3 different guides, even though I love some of the backstories that a lot of these guides have and the plethora of information that you can mine for a handout. I essentially just went with the first 3. I went with Azaka, Iku, and Forlore and Gondolo. Now, luckily they went with Iku, so they were kind of having a fun time with Iku, role-playing Iku, bouncing off a little bit with her, and she was a great one. Now, I really wish I could have gone a little bit further with some of these other NPCs, because they, especially with Shago, I think Shago's a really good personality to throw in. But again, I just decided, you know what? There's just a lot of choice on here and they were getting too much into the paradox of choice. So I just kind of threw in those 3 they chose from those 3. So with Iku at their hands, they decided to go into the big, scary Chult landscape. And this was just a fun time. I had them go down the one of the main rivers there, coming into the Aldani Basin. And this was actually one of the first mods and the biggest mod that I made to this game in terms of like backstory and whatnot. The first was the Lich of Valandra Shadowmantle. They immediately just called her the Shadow Lich or the Beauty Lich because when I presented her to the group, I said, you know, she's the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. She's undeniably gorgeous. And so from that point on, she just became the Beauty Lich. I was still kind of calling her Valandra. So I made Valandra's backstory that she was the daughter of Aesorak, and her whole point was to take down her father before he could amass too much power. And that's what led her to the lichdom and becoming a lich and also have a stake in the game. This was also one of my major things that I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have done that, because from that point on, she follows the party with them. But this was also really, really fun. She was not necessarily a very friendly NPC to the party. She was sometimes a hindrance to the party in terms of being this antagonal force that at any time, like she's a nuclear bomb, right? She's got so many really tasty spells that the party maybe could get out of her, but she's also extremely hesitant. Like she's like, my eye on the prize is taking down Aesorak. That's also another thing. I never let on that she was the daughter that I changed her into be. So it wasn't until the final showdown where Aesorak sees Valandra and calls her by her full name. Because up until that point, they were just essentially just calling her the Beauty Lich, saying, "Oh, welcome, daughter. Are you here to, fulfill the promise that you made to me centuries ago?" And she's like, "I will be your downfall, father. I will take you down with me." And this was also a great point because even though I got them up to level 11 with the final showdown of Aesorak could mop the floor with them. Like, I love Aesorak, but holy geez, like, he's got some massive spells. So that's another little mod that I made. Having and keeping Valandra in the party for as long as they did, she shows down with Aesorak, nerfs about half of his hit points, takes out the 9th and 8th level spell slots, and depletes the rest of his spell slots by half. This way, they won't die immediately when they take down the soulmonger and the little baby child of the Atropole. So when the party came to their final showdown, which they actually completed last night, they had the Atropole and the soulmonger to take out, which provided quite a bit of energy for them. But still, their main eye on the prize was taking down Aesorak. So I wanted to give them that opportunity and that hope. So once they took down both of those, Aesorak comes flying in after defeating his daughter. We're kind of going to get to how that plays out in a second. That also gave the party a great opportunity to nerf him a little bit. So he starts off with 3 spell slots from level 4th to level 7th spells. I nerfed that down to 2 across the board because essentially he and Valandra were just like counterspelling every other thing. So yeah, and of course I took away his 8th and 9th level. That gave them a little bit of a leg up in terms of the battle to see that through. The other big thing that I changed a little bit, I did introduce Arctic Simber on here. I did change his name to Atticus. I don't know why, but his name was Atticus Simber. And Atticus, this was a really, really fun thing. I did introduce the Ring of Winter, but I actually made the Ring of Winter his wedding ring rather than from the Frost Giants big thing. And in this game, because they didn't play the Frost Giants game, the wedding ring was actually the phylactery for Valandra, who turned out to be his wife. Now, I'm huge on these whole big reveals of characters and like big soap opera-y reveals. Like he was the twin the whole time. I'm huge on those kinds of character development. I love that. And so he didn't realize that Valandra was still in Chult. He thought that Valandra stayed in the wandering city of Mesro. I think that's the wandering city. So he kept thinking that she stayed there to continue her studies, didn't realize that she took over the heart of Ubito, or Ubteo. I always called it the Ubito. I butchered half of these names, by the way, while I was playing this. So having that connection, and so once Atticus found Valandra, there was this big moment of reveal, and because at that point, the party had already met Atticus previously, said, "Sorry, man, we haven't seen your wife." They were all looking for the wandering city of Mesro. But there's this big final showdown, or I guess reveal, where Atticus and Valandra meet and have this heartfelt reunion. But here's the big turn of events. The party, before leaving Atticus, they realize that the ring has major importance, and they did know that this was Valandra's phylactery. So the monk of the party steals it from Atticus by rolling like a sleight of hand of 30. I'm still a little bitter about that, but that's the way the dice roll. Took the ring from his finger and go into the Tomb of Annihilation at that point. He decides to stay back, realizing that if he joins Valandra into the tomb, he's putting her at major risk because that phylactery could get destroyed. So he options to stay out and help them from the outside. Unfortunately, once they defeat Aceract and all that, when they return, he's a pile of bones. He's dead now that the spell keeping him alive from the Ring of Winter is no longer there. So getting back to how Aceract killed off Valandra, Valandra's body is found, but the party knows that she could come back with the phylactery still intact. So there's a little bit of role-playing that we need to finish off. Maybe we will one day, about how that's all resolved. Anyway, they're able to take care of our good buddy Aceract. He teleports out of there. It really kind of bugs them. And that was one thing. Aceract doesn't get the big downfall that the party was hoping for. And so I gave them the chance to kill off his body, but not find the phylactery. So as he teleports away, there's a Dobby bait and switch where the paladin throws a dagger at him, hits him just as he's teleporting, and he falls into the... I made him go to the Shadow Realm, or the Shadowfell, as a way to kind of take stock. And upon getting there, because he only had 4 HP left, after the big disintegration spell that one of my players threw at him, he got hit by the dagger, and that was the cutscene at the end of the credits, that he's safe on the Shadowfell until the dagger hits him in the back, and that destroys his body. So yeah, that was one of the mods that I made in terms of storytelling and areas like that. Because of City on the Edge and the involvement with the Yuan-ti, it provided a much more grounding of the Yuan-ti, because I feel like the Yuan-ti, outside of just being the snakes in the jungle and just their presence being there, I didn't feel like there was a lot of tie into the actual story, especially once you get to the whole Temple of the Serpents and the Raz-Nazi. So I had Raz-Nazi's presence be in the consciousness of the players from City on the Edge, because it was Raz-Nazi's like underlings that were trying to construct this dagger. And so this gave the players an offshoot mission to finally put a stop to a lot of that. Now, through the process, I had a couple of players actually turn into the Yuan-ti. I had them do that with the ritual to get them in there and to give them an option. And I also made Phanthaza's presence a lot more benevolent and helpful for the party. Also, I found out if there's a NPC that you feel is getting in the way, I had a really fun way of playing with that. Once they got to Orlonga and Mambala, especially with Mambala having Nanny Poo being the hag there, I was able to clear out one PC because the party split and left her alone with Nanny Poo. That was fun. And I also took out, unfortunately, Iku. Because I'm like, well, I want them to be lost in this jungle. I want this guide to fly away. And not only now do they have to find Omu on their own, but now they have to kind of truck through Chult by themselves. So that was a really fun kind of way to get rid of them. Now, while they were in Orlunga, I had that serpent god come in, and this also helped bring about more tension with the Yuan-ti, because she was extremely angered with what Raz-Nazi was doing, especially within Omu. So this was another way to get them to Omu. The serpent deity knew where old Razi was, so it was an area for them to get in there. Anyway, I've rambled on for about 20 minutes now. Those were just some of the main hacks and modifications that I made to Tomb of Annihilations. Once they got into the actual tomb itself, it was pretty much follow the book, get into a room, figure out the puzzle, try not to die. And it was really fun kind of role playing throughout that. And having the Beauty Lich be backup whenever they need it. The only time that I used the Beauty Lich throughout the entire, I say Beauty Lich, but it's Old Valandra, was on level 5 when they got through the Hall of Decay, because I didn't want them to be nerfed entirely. So I had one player go through it, nerf all of his non-magical items, which was quite a bit, and then having her cast this massive dispel magic that really took a toll on her. And I showed why by showing that her facade breaks. You see that withered corpse of the Lich. And it shows that some of these bigger magical spells do drain the magic users quite a bit. So yeah, they didn't get to everything. Obviously, they didn't get to the Mechanist Chain and the Armorilli Sphere, which I was really hoping that they would. That was a lot of fun. But I mean, for the most part, they were able to uncover pretty much most rooms in the actual Tomb of Annihilation. So yeah, those were some of the modifications. Have you played through this? What were some of your D&D stories throughout this campaign? What were some of the modifications and homebrew that you threw into this? Those were just some of the ones that I did. And yeah, that's pretty much about it for this one. Still working on the catchphrase of ending this all off. You know, whatever you're playing, play with your heart or play with passion. Maybe I'll do play with passion. I kind of like that. Yeah. So yeah, just keep gaming, have some fun, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.